The Black Forest. Far beyond Germany's borders, the name is synonymous with a magical natural paradise. The Black Forest is the most famous low mountain range in Germany, lying to the southwest of the country. In the semi-darkness beneath the trees, roe deer can hide themselves easily. As shadows are a typical feature beneath the tall spruce and fir trees that dominate the landscape. Here, the roe deer are safe from hunters and other inquisitive eyes. A great spotted woodpecker can be heard for miles around, hammering noisily at branches and tree trunks for food. Underneath the bark is where larvae and beetles live, a real treat for this young woodpecker. He's not much interested in what goes on in the brushwood below. It's high summer, and although the roe deer's mating season is long over, there are still some lone roebucks pestering the females. For the magnificent stags, their most exciting time lies ahead. Before man changed the face of the Black Forest, this used to be primarily a mixed forest region. Vestiges of this original forest are now only found in conservation areas and reserves. Fallen trees tear gaps in the tree canopy, creating clearings. Shy forest dwellers stalk the undergrowth. Herbs, grasses, and insects offer a wide variety of food. Wildcats were thought to be extinct in the Black Forest. In the past few years, 1 or 2 have been spotted occasionally. The mother wildcat needs a safe lair to raise her young. A hideaway at the edge of a sunny clearing provides an ideal spot. Untouched mixed forests are an important sanctuary and refuge for more than just the wild cats. Damp pools formed by clear streams create an ideal habitat for the rare fire salamander. As natural protection from wild cats and other predators, it exudes a poisonous secretion from glands in its skin when threatened. Striking yellow and black coloring is a clear sign that it's inedible. Where the forest floor is damp and pristine, it finds plenty of woodlice, snails, earthworms, and beetles. The areas bordering forest and field are home to an especially wide range of species. Ferns and mosses thrive in this combination of light and shade, along with herbs, grasses, bushes, and flowering plants. The red foxglove is highly poisonous for both man and animals. Its poison is digitalis, and it's used in pharmaceuticals to treat heart failure. Blackberries not only taste delicious, their brambly bushes provide protective shelter for many small animals. An excellent climber, the yellow-necked field mouse also gets to enjoy the juicy berries. The lush undergrowth and trees at the edge of the forest is a paradise for birds, small creatures, and wild animals. For the shy wildcat, it's an ideal starting point for mouse hunting forays in the adjacent fields. And for its young, a perfect playground. The end of summer is the most bountiful season. Berries and seeds are abundant. The Black Forest is one of the largest unbroken forest areas in Germany. Deciduous trees are rare. The most common trees here are spruce and fir. These conifers are easy to tell apart by the positioning of their cones. When they're ripe, fir cones point upwards, even when empty after their winged seeds have fallen to the ground or have been eaten by birds. The upright, empty cones stay attached to the branches for years. The cones of the spruce, on the other hand, point downwards from its branches. Unlike the fir cones, the spruce's cones don't stay on its branches for long. As soon as they ripen, they fall off onto the forest floor below. In late summer, when it's warm and damp, mushrooms begin to shoot up out of the ground. There are over 800 different types of fungus in the Black Forest, of which only around 100 are edible. And these edible mushrooms have plenty of takers. September is when the gathering and hoarding begins. Mice and squirrels help themselves to the plentiful supplies of acorns, beechnuts, berries and seeds. From the rocky landscape of the Battert in the northern Black Forest, the view stretches all the way to the Rhine Valley. On a clear day, you can even make out the far-off mountains of the Vosges on the other side of the Rhine in France. In the uplands, the first frosts can often begin in September. The roe deer's food sources are increasingly becoming scarce. Roe deer are ruminants. They regurgitate what they eat to extract as much nutrition from the tough plant food as possible. In autumn, the first deer begin to retreat back into the forest. And another forest dweller appears. The unmistakable roars of rutting stags echo among the trees. Not even rain and storms stop them from loudly courting the female objects of their desires. Autumn is the time for the deciduous trees of the Black Forest to deck themselves out in resplendent colour. Beech, oak, ash and many others react to the shorter days. They withdraw the green chlorophyll from their leaves, turning them to brilliant autumn shades. The animals use the last few days of autumn to prepare for the cold season ahead and find shelter. The salamander hides in fissures between the rocks or in caves. The squirrel hibernates in a tree hollow. It's already hidden the stores it will use throughout the coming winter. The autumn mists now hang between the trees, bringing an eerie quiet to the forest. And in October, while temperatures in the valleys are often quite mild, up on the higher hillsides, at almost 1,500 meters, the first snow has already fallen. Red deer and roe deer find it harder to forage. They withdraw deeper and deeper into the forest. As temperatures sink below freezing and the grasses and herbs begin to disappear beneath the snow, the deer turn to the thin bark covering of branches and twigs for food. The middle-spotted woodpecker hunts for insect larvae under the bark, but in winter it will have to do with nuts and seeds. The deer form larger groups and forage together. Most of the does are pregnant. The bucks have lost their antlers and from a distance can hardly be distinguished from the females. In the deep snow, the animals scratch laboriously for every meager mouthful. This is a matter of survival. The great tit rummages in crevices in the trees for hidden larvae. During storms and snow, the deer seek shelter in the undergrowth. They move about as little as possible, conserving their strength. The sunlight now only reaches the tips of the mountains. Heavy snow falls, coniferous woods deep in snow. Winter has arrived. There is hardly any animal life to be seen. Hares have a thick, insulating winter coat. They just let themselves be covered in snow. Roe deer, on the other hand, are much less well protected from the weather. Not all of them will survive the winter. Crows are clever omnivores and will generally survive winter well. Most of the birds have stopped singing and fluffed themselves up to save energy. Red deer roam through the forest in small groups. Although the snow between the trees is not that deep, there is little for them to eat. Bark and lichen are their main source of food now. But the deer's high nutritional needs can cause so much damage to the trees that they often die. This has led to forestry managers classifying deer as a pest and confining them to certain areas. The crows seem unperturbed by the snow. Carrion, rubbish, or nuts, they find something to eat almost anywhere. In January and February, winter has the Black Forest firmly in its grip. The entire mountain region is covered by a blanket of snow. At the end of February, this roe deer still has to make do with meager twigs, but spring is not far off now. The days are getting longer. The sun's rays are already starting to shed warmth. These first boisterous leaps look a lot like anticipation. Early March and the approach of spring can be felt everywhere. Melting snow transforms frozen creeks into gushing brooks, creating artistic ice sculptures. Spring snowflakes appear, bringing the first touch of greenery back to the forest, early signs of burgeoning life. The hare has already begun his search for a mate. The robin is loudly calling for his partner too. He is preparing himself. The blackbird rootles about on the forest floor for hidden tidbits. The blue tit has already begun looking around for a suitable tree hollow to house her eggs. Spring is unmistakably and loudly in the air. In early April, countless cherry trees begin to blossom on the sunny slopes of the Rhine Valley riverbanks. The luxuriant blossoms attract bees. Without their help in pollination, there would be no cherries at all. With more than 400 wing strokes per second, they buzz among the blossoms, sucking the nectar and filling the pollen sacs on their legs. Everywhere there's singing, flowering, jubilating. Spring has well and truly arrived. The fresh greenery of deciduous trees stands out brightly between the dark coniferous forests. Ferns are one of the oldest types of plants on Earth. In the shade of the forest, they unroll their leaves in a familiar, age-old pattern. Soon the forest floor is thickly carpeted with ferns. Their pointed tips are wonderfully useful as a takeoff ramp. Between the fronds, spiders weave their webs and wait patiently for their winged prey. Attracted by the many colourful blossoms, bees, flies and beetles are out in swarms. Fresh spruce and pine shoots are a favourite for roe deer and red deer. The cawing of the crows is less dominant amid the busy soundscape. Blackbirds trill their songs from the highest treetops. Flocks of birds hunt for insects, larvae and caterpillars between the young needles. The mystical lakes of the Black Forest provide an ideal setting for sagas and myths. Legend has it that ghosts and wraiths prowl here. The so-called Corrie lakes are witness to the landscaping forces of the last ice age. They're known as the dark eyes of the Black Forest. Their shores are almost all strictly protected, being home to rare frogs, newts, and other endangered species. The grass frog's mating concert lasts only a few days. The female lays spawn containing thousands of eggs that are fertilized by the male. The tadpoles soon hatch. It takes around 3 months for them to turn into adult grass frogs. The adjacent upland moor is home to the rare capercaillie. Small stones in its stomach help to digest its favorite food, tough spruce and fir needles. At last there are enough nutritious shoots and leaves for the roe deer to eat its fill. Gradually it loses its thick winter fur. Underneath, its smooth red summer coat shines through. Trees and meadows blossom and bloom in the warm sunlight. Dandelions are an important pasture for bees in spring. They swarm around the plants and gather nectar. A bee swarm has to visit over 100,000 blossoms to produce a single kilogram of honey. For creatures of all sizes, the hard times are finally over. Once again, they have everything they need for their existence. The Black Forest is one of Germany's largest and loveliest natural areas, a nature idyll in the heart of Europe. Jamaica, Caribbean paradise with a rich history. The island is full of exotic phenomena. Although everyday life can be hard for Jamaicans, they have a special formula.
Take it easy.
Away from the beaches, far from tourist attractions, Jamaica reveals its rural face. The highlands abound with exotic animals and plants. A closer look reveals little gems of nature everywhere, such as the Jamaican national bird, the doctor bird. Grassy mountain slopes and bamboo-covered valleys are a welcome sight for the eyes and balm for the senses. In the mountains, the fertile soil yields abundant harvests of fruit and vegetables. Even a small garden can sustain a family, especially when there's enough left over to be sold. Coconut, banana, pineapple, ackee, mango, avocado or breadfruit, almost all tropical fruits grow in Jamaica. In addition to the fertile soil, their lush growth is due to the tropical climate and, not least, to the wealth of water on the island. The subsoil consists to a greater extent of porous limestone, which is easily dissolved in the water and deposited in terraces downstream. This process results in elaborate limestone plateaus and waterfalls, over which the watercourses find their way through the rainforest towards the sea. Rivers were often the only way to transport goods from the largely inaccessible inland plantations to the densely populated coastlines. Bamboo rafts were the preferred method used. Built of dried bamboo poles, they're strong enough to endure rough passages. Though it's the raftsman's daily routine, steering a raft through the rapids is a challenging job. It needs full concentration, balance, and skill to navigate it just right. A raft has a limited working life of about 6 months before it rots. Then they simply build a new one. Banana plantations and a cemetery are signs that a settlement is near. The load is approaching its destination, and the ride will soon be over. Rafting is hard work, but rarely fast-paced, like many other things here on the island. After it arrives at the village jetty on the coastal plain, the raft is unloaded onto a pushcart.
Banana, cherry.
A handmade wooden vehicle. For many people on the island, it's the only affordable means of transportation. At the coast, fishing is a popular way for Jamaicans to earn a little money to get by. But the struggle against the elements is a hard and dangerous way to make a living. Anyone who owns a boat often shares it with others to keep fuel costs down. That's what Roy Collins does. He's happy to live on his own in a simple little beach hut. He's well equipped. Everything he needs for fishing is within reach. His friends were lucky today. The sea was calm and the catch successful. Bonito, a species of tuna, are the most highly prized fish.
I'm a fisherman. I like the fishing, I like the water, I like the beach. So, you know, and then it's a little bit more slower for me in Jamaica. I can take it more relaxed, it's not so fast, so, you know, and the life is a little bit more natural, you know. When you want to live like not so much stress and, you know, get away from most of the headache and things, and you try to live a more simple life, you know, where you don't need so much expensive things, and then, you know, sometimes you can't afford it, so what you want to do? Live a simple life and you have less headache, you know.
Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, is located on the southeast of the island. About 1 million people live in the metropolitan area. The city owes its existence to the enormous natural harbour. It's much more difficult to live a simple life here than it is on the beach. Although it's a modern city, you still find plenty of simple pushcarts here. They're used for all kinds of things, competing courageously with their motorized counterparts. Downtown Kingston still holds many remnants of the British colonialism that ended in 1962. But like the famous Ward Theatre, some historic buildings have fallen into ruin due to lack of funds. Well-kept statues, however, are everywhere. Around William Grant Park, historic and contemporary national heroes stand watch over the chaotic traffic. Their biggest hero takes pride of place. Bob Marley, the king of reggae, a world-esteemed Rastafarian idol, and certainly the most famous Jamaican. Kingston has had an eventful past. More than 300 years ago, the harbour was already one of the most important in the Caribbean. The original harbour town was situated on a promontory. Today, only fishing vessels moor here, and the fishermen make a modest living. The ocean-going liners pass by on the other side of the bay, heading to and from the main harbour. Where this little fishing village is located today was once the pirate town of Port Royal. It became infamous as the most lawless town in the Caribbean, used by buccaneers as a launching place to sail off on their raids in the 17th century. Until, after an earthquake in 1692, most of the city sank below sea level, killing around 2,000 inhabitants. Kingston was founded by fugitives and survivors of the ruined town of Port Royal, and quickly grew into the biggest town in Jamaica. The harbour is one of the largest in the Caribbean, an essential stop for thousands of ocean-going liners every year, and a magnet for shipping of all kinds. Kingston is the economic heart of Jamaica. People from all over the country are drawn to the town in the hope of finding their fortune here. But 30% of the population is unemployed. This has led to Kingston becoming one of the worst crime capitals in the world. Two sides of the same coin. Magnificent sunsets as night falls on one of the most beautiful islands in the Caribbean, versus the brutal reality of poverty and violence. The people in Jamaica have to learn to live with it. Coronation Market in Kingston, the biggest market in Jamaica and main supply centre for many Jamaicans. An industrious flow of people coming and going, buying and selling, vendors touting their goods and shoppers chasing bargains, all create an unmistakable soundscape and an atmosphere of constant hustle and bustle. For the stall owners, their day starts at 5 o'clock in the morning. Late afternoon is closing time, and they can take a well-earned break. Many people play dominoes, a national sport in Jamaica. They mostly play for drinks or small change. This particular form of dominoes is called cutthroat, but the bloodthirsty name belies its true character. It just means each player plays for themselves against the others. Some prefer to enjoy the late afternoon with music and dance. In memory of their African ancestry, some traditional songs are still performed in their original African languages. The next day, many of them will be off to work. For some, this will be in the fields on one of the country's numerous sugarcane plantations. Sugarcane is cultivated on a large scale in Jamaica. The main purpose of these gigantic plantations is producing sugar, one of the island's main exports. But of course, much more famous internationally, and definitely more popular, is Jamaican rum. It's made by extracting the juice of the sugarcane. This is then fermented and distilled. The recipes are top secret and diligently guarded. After the distillation process, the rum has to mature in wooden barrels. It takes up to 15 years for quality rum to get its characteristic flavor. An old sugarcane mill from the late 19th century is still kept in operation for demonstration purposes. In bygone days, producers used water power for larger quantities of sugarcane. The relics of a 400-year-old water wheel and the ruins of a sugarcane mill originate from the Spanish era. The settlers of Sevilla de la Nueva produced sugar for export to Europe. Only ruins remain of the colonists' constructions. They arrived with the royal conquistadores to claim the island on behalf of the Spanish crown. The British expelled the Spaniards when they occupied Jamaica in 1655. Their architectural imprints are all over the island. One of the most impressive is Colbeck Castle, which served as a fortress against possible Spanish retaliation. Built in the style of an Italian mansion, it was named after Colonel Colbeck, a soldier in the invading British forces who is said to have ruled his plantations from this extravagant residence. Nowadays, the walls, built from limestone and red brick, house only wild bees and lizards. In the heartland of Jamaica, the seemingly endless mountains are sparsely populated. Bridges span clear rivers, giving access to hidden plantations and hamlets in the bush. Tropical fruits grow in an exciting variety in the wild here, and can be harvested by anyone. Some are eaten fresh, like orange, mango, coconut, or avocado. Others need to be roasted like breadfruit or cooked like ackee. They are an all-important nutritional source for humans and animals. Not everyone has the means to transport their produce to the municipal markets. Stalls set up along thoroughfares in the countryside offer a big variety of fruit and vegetables at reasonable prices, directly from the fields and gardens. Especially popular with Jamaicans is ackee.
Ackee, it mostly grow wild. So you can always go and get ackee every place. And, you know, some people sell it, but usually you can go and look it for yourself. It's a good meal and it's very cheap. Most people can afford to get some ackee with a little piece of saltfish and the whole family enjoy it, you know. So people don't have so much money where they can buy a lot of other stuff, so they can buy it. You can get some ackee. When the ackee time, people use it up, you know.
Ackee is actually poisonous and should not be picked from the tree when the fruits are still closed. They're only ready for consumption when they've burst open. First, the pulp has to be carefully cut from the peel, and the inedible pips must be removed. The consistency of the pulp is reminiscent of rubber, so it has to be cooked for at least half an hour. In the meantime, the other ingredients for this traditional Jamaican meal are prepared. Onions, sweet pepper, garlic and tomatoes. After the vegetable spice mix has been fried in vegetable oil, the drained ackee is added. It's simmered for a short while, and then the traditional ackee dish can be served. It's Sunday today. And Roy has cooked enough for all his friends. The meal will not be eaten at a table in the sun. That's for tourists. They eat where they feel most comfortable, in the shade. The taste of ackee is a bit like spicy scrambled eggs. It's a healthy meal as it's high in plant oils and rich in protein. Cleaning the dishes in the sea saves precious drinking water, and it's environmentally friendly. There's no detergent needed. The sand scrubs the dishes clean, and the remaining crumbs feed the small fish in the shallow water. Most Jamaicans go to church on Sundays. 2/3 of the population belong to a Protestant congregation, and most of their churches feature Anglican architecture. Only a few fishermen set out on a Sunday. Frigate birds, however, have to find fish every day of the week. They often circle above the beaches in anticipation of an easy meal. The birds have a very broad wingspan and spend most of their lives airborne. As soon as the fish are gutted, they swoop in and grab their share of the catch. Today there are slim pickings. Most of the boats stayed high up on the beach. Relaxing, going to church and spending time on the beach, as in many places around the world, on Sundays, idleness rules. But in Jamaica, people like to take it easy every other day of the week too. Slowing down, or decelerating, as it's called in Western industrialized countries, has long been the preferred lifestyle here. Even though life doesn't provide riches for most Jamaicans, people try to maintain their vitality and serenity.
You know, I live like a cowboy on the beach. I don't eat so much. When you're not really sick and you have freedom and, you know, you're not in jail, you're free of movement, then life is okay, you know. When you get up and you can see the sunshine and everything is okay, that is very important, you know. Yeah, man. So you can enjoy life. Take it easy. Try to take it easy because it's not so easy to take it easy. You know. So you have to just try to take it easy, you know.
Madagascar, island paradise in the Indian Ocean. It's home to a unique animal and plant kingdom. A place filled with myth and magic.
Madagascar, I know Sarea. Madagascar, I know Sarea.
500 kilometers off the east coast of Africa lies the island of Madagascar, only discovered by humans around 2,000 years ago. They came from Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. The diverse origins of the Malagasy tribes are evident today in their lifestyles and traditions. Home to the fishermen of the Vosges tribe is Anakau in the southwest of Madagascar. It's a remote region and hard to reach over land. The Vosges live primarily on the water and fish according to traditional methods. Outriggers are the most important possession here. They're used not only for fishing, but also to transport all kinds of goods. The only way to get from one place to another quickly is by boat. The inland is impassable and inhospitable. Just a short distance away from the beach, the dense Madagascar spiny forest begins. This is no place for human beings. But there's an astonishing array of animals living in the thorny brush, such as the mouse lemur and the red-capped kua. The beautiful markings on its shell have made the radiated tortoise a popular addition to terrariums around the world. At home, it's threatened with extinction. Many of the plants growing in the spiny forest of southwestern Madagascar have never been documented, biologically or pharmaceutically. The highly respected local healers, however, have known since time immemorial which leaves, blossoms, bark and wood are effective against sickness. This green pharmacy is still integral to their healing practices today. As inhospitable and repellent as they might look, spiny forests are rich in bizarre animal and plant life that has adapted itself in many ways to the extremely dry conditions. Moisture-retaining stalks and leaves and well-fortified thorns and barbs help the plants to survive heat and water shortages. The sunbird feasts on the honey of the aloe blossoms. Most of the plants and animals in the spiny forest of Madagascar can only be found here. This chameleon is one of them. Normally it moves very slowly, imitating the movement of swaying branches. To get from one tree to another, it has to climb to the outer tip of a branch and hope that the wind will blow it to within reach of another tree. A rather precarious situation, as here it's visible to birds of prey. Made it. The chameleon can easily hide from enemies in this maze-like plant. The Madagascan sand lizard has a so-called pineal eye on the top of its head. Biologists believe that this light-sensitive organ helps regulate the reptile's circadian rhythm. Surprisingly, there's actually water in the subsoil of this arid region. Prehistoric stalactite caves provide nocturnal birds with shelter during the day. A real rarity, however, are the blind fish. Their eyes have completely disappeared, a sign that they've been living isolated in darkness for millions of years. The Vezo are considered to be the children of the sea. Motorboats are rare around here, as they're much too expensive. Many families still live mainly on the sea. They sail from one island to another along the huge coral reef that lies just off the west coast of Madagascar. Up till now, they've enjoyed rich fishing grounds. But increasingly they're forced to share this wealth with international fishing fleets that descend on the coastal waters of Madagascar and threaten the livelihood of the Vezo. Much of the reef off the west coast is still an almost pristine underwater paradise. But climate change is taking its toll here too. Rising water temperatures cause many corals to die off. The reef still manages to rejuvenate itself, harboring a breathtaking coral landscape and offering the Vezo tribe bountiful fishing grounds. Swimming or flying, the red-tailed tropic bird lives far out to sea. It only goes ashore to breed. An ideal location for it is the little island of Nosive, about half an hour by pirogue from Anakau. There are no voracious rats, so these seabirds can raise their young unmolested. The young still have black bills, but at 6 weeks old they're almost full grown, and the adult birds spend longer periods away from the nest. Madagascar is huge, almost a small continent in itself, with widely differing landscapes. It's 1,500 kilometers from the dry coast in the southwest to the humid northeast. The Masoala National Park is home to the Indri. They are early risers. High up in the treetops, they begin their search for tasty leaves. It's the largest of the lemur species to have evolved only on Madagascar. Indris are sacred animals and may not be killed or eaten. In Malagasy mythology, they are man's brethren. Their eerie cries are intended to stop other groups from trespassing on their territory. Once the dawn chorus is over, the noise level in the forest dies down, and the Indri family devotes itself to essential matters like grooming and eating. Augustin and Felix are nature guides and know virtually all the species in the Masoala National Park and where to find them. The white-headed lemur is a tree dweller and is indigenous to the rainforest in the island's northeast. The rare leaf-tailed gecko is perfectly suited to its surroundings. Its days are spent upside down on a tree trunk, and it only moves when disturbed. But at night, it goes on the hunt for insects. Trees with these ferns growing on them are also regarded as sacred by the Malagasy. They believe that this is where the souls of departed babies rest. Taboos like this often serve to protect nature better than scientific argument. The national park in the Masoala Peninsula is the biggest nature conservation area in northeastern Madagascar. It's where the forest meets the sea almost seamlessly. The thickly wooded terrain rises steeply behind the beach. Only a few humans have settled here. The sparse villages are hidden behind the trees. True natives of the island live in the forest. While some cuddle together ready to sleep, others are just waking up. The fanaloka, for example. The fanaloka is one of Madagascar's few predators, though it's harmless to human beings. Masoala's rainforests lie in a region with one of the highest levels of precipitation on Earth. Some 4,000 litres of rain per square metre falls here every year. The massed cloud banks of the southeast trade wind offload their rain onto the steep mountains in the east. Like a sponge, the rainforest soaks it up, giving moisture-loving creatures an ideal habitat. For a long time, the Malagasy were left to themselves on their island. In their isolated location, in the thrall of overwhelmingly powerful nature, they developed a unique mythology and religion. Lakes, mountains, trees and animals are often said to be sacred or fadi, which means untouchable or taboo. Chameleons are held to be harbingers of fortune, sometimes of ill fortune. or even to house the souls of the dead. It is unlucky to point directly at a chameleon. Nature guides Augustin and Felix are careful to observe this taboo as well. Madagascar is the land of the chameleon. Some 60 different species live in the various climatic regions of the island. That's almost half of the chameleon species known worldwide. There are many tales that tell of the nature of these bizarre creatures, like this one. The chameleon was once the fastest animal on Earth. One day, it ran over the Son of God by mistake. In his wrath, God threw the chameleon to the ground. When it came to, it looked all around in all directions to see what had happened, and swore that from that day on, it would only walk very slowly. Since then, it considers each step very carefully, so that it will never tread on the Son of God again. The chameleon's eyes can focus on objects up to 1 kilometer away. They scan the environment independently of one another in search of likely prey. Once it has located what it's looking for, its lightning-fast tongue does the rest. In the interior of Madagascar lies the mountainous region of Andringitra. It's a remote area. The locals live mainly off what they grow themselves. The weather here is variable. In the mountains, some of which are up to 2,000 meters high, tremendous storms often occur. The majestic mountains and mystical cloud formations seem almost otherworldly, suggesting the spirit world of the holy Andringitra mountain range. The Andringitra National Park is an unusual conservation area. It's a habitat for valuable orchids and rare animals that can only be found in this region. This huge highland area was only made accessible to the public in 1998. It's a gem of a landscape, especially because of the rare orchids that grow wild in the fields. Napoleon Rakoto Jauna is a nature guide and knows the names of all the plants and animals. The high plateau is a gigantic reservoir. Small streams flow together and swell until the water finally pours over a rocky ledge and drops down into the valley. Legend has it that long ago, a royal couple was cured of their childless state here. Since then, the spot has been sacred. For Napoleon, just the right place to call on the ancestors. As the head of his family, it's his duty to ask for guidance and benevolence from his departed ancestors. Whether Christian, Muslim or Buddhist, traditional ancestor worship remains at the core of their belief for almost everyone in Madagascar. The waters of the high plateau eventually flow into the forests on the mountain slopes and are transformed into countless little rivulets and brooks running through the undergrowth. The damp forest is home to many species of birds and insects. Golden orb weaver spiders choose sunny spots in which to spin their webs, which can be up to 2 meters wide. The golden cobwebs are so strong that hundreds of years ago people used to weave fabric out of them, but to produce just a small piece of silk took the cobwebs of hundreds of thousands of spiders, which soon put an end to that method of silk fabric production. Water is the basic prerequisite for growing rice, and there's no shortage of it in the region. Countless trenches and channels ensure that the water reaches to the very farthest corner of the terraced rice paddies. At the foot of the mountains, there's a group of ring-tailed lemurs living in the forest. Known locally as maki, they live in large family groups. They're extremely communicative and keep in contact with each other by means of loud screeches. With their unmistakable markings and cute behavior, they've rightfully been chosen as Madagascar's mascot. Some more symbolic creatures can be found on the west coast. Zebus live everywhere in Madagascar and represent great wealth. Also used as sacrificial animals, they are indispensable for ancestor worship. The island's most famous tree is the baobab. It's said that baobabs were planted upside down by the maker by mistake, and instead of their branches, it's their roots that reach to the skies. They're said to have healing, even magical properties. According to local law, the trees near this lake can even cure women of infertility. And who can resist their magical attraction? Only about an hour's drive from the baobab landscape lies the sea. Here, the typical local cargo sailboats, known as boutres, sail up and down the coastline. The shores here are often covered in mangrove swamps. They form an effective barricade against the formidable cyclones. Their thick root systems give the mangroves a solid foothold, and their fruit is shaped so that it falls like an arrow into the swampy morass and takes hold there. Fiddler crabs live among the seedlings. At ebb tide, they crawl out of their little caves to look for food. Their mouth parts filter the sand for everything that's edible. The rest is discarded in the form of little balls. Mangroves and their saplings are unfazed by the constant ebb and flow of the ocean. The salt water is not a problem for them either. On the contrary, they need this extreme habitat between the sea and the land. The mudskipper is another extremist, a fish that lives more on land than in the water. The fertile mangroves are not only a refuge for crabs, insects and birds, they also provide a safe spawning ground for fish. Fishermen can't make big catches here, but the labyrinthine mangrove roots protect the future generations of fish that will probably ultimately land up in their nets out at sea. Fishermen often spend all day in their dugouts. It isn't easy to catch enough fish to feed an entire family, and there are few other sources of income around here. Even children build their own boats out of wood offcuts and plastic bags. They start learning early. Sailing a boutre is especially challenging. There's no room for modern technology. There are no engines and no navigation equipment. The captain and his crew rely entirely on their own sailing experience. Calm or storm, it's the only thing that brings them safely back to harbour, time and again. Madagascar has changed a great deal since the first settlers arrived from across the ocean. But this unique island world has still managed to retain much of its wild, natural beauty. And this is how the fascination of Madagascar lives on. Sri Lanka, formerly known as Ceylon. Almost as large as Ireland, the tropical island lies off the southeast coast of India. It's a land full of cultural and scenic diversity. And it's a nature paradise, rich in species with exotic flora and fauna. To the west, where the sun sinks into the Indian Ocean, lies Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka. Nothing remains of the rustic charm of this former fishing village. The Colombo of today is a modern metropolis and a major port for the world's trade routes. But Colombo is also the city of temples. Sri Kailasanathar Swami Devastanam is one of the oldest Hindu temples in Colombo, with shrines dedicated to Lord Shiva and Ganesha. The temple tower symbolizes mystical Mount Meru, seat of Lord Brahma and the demigods. Nearby is the Colombo railway station, starting point for one of the island's most popular train journeys. Pulled by a steam-driven locomotive, this historical train is a favorite with locals and visitors alike. The wood-panelled compartments hark back to bygone British colonial days. The showpiece of the lovingly restored train is the restaurant carriage. And of course, the bar. The nostalgic journey heads towards the center of the island. Visitors from abroad are greeted by traditional Sinhalese dancers. And they're welcomed by an elephant. The animal is sacred in this country. The interior of Sri Lanka is fertile and lush. A tropical climate predominates in most of the lower-lying regions. Despite the high population density, it's an ideal habitat for plants and animals. There are more than 400 species of birds on the island, 27 of which are unique to Sri Lanka. Countless lakes supply the fields and the virgin forests with abundant water. Shimmering white stupas are Buddhist monuments that can be seen from miles around. In Sri Lanka, they're called dagobas and are found in every temple compound, often with holy relics sealed inside them. The country's culture has been shaped by Buddhism for over 2,000 years. "70% of the country's inhabitants are Buddhists, but Muslims, Christians, and especially Hindus live here too. For years, warlike skirmishes with the Hindu Tamils gripped the country, but peace has reigned since 2009. It was not only the people who suffered during the many years of armed conflict. During the Civil War, many elephants were killed by landmines or died from gunshot wounds. They used to be regarded as an endangered species, but lately their stocks have slowly begun to rise. Today, there are some 4,000 wild Asian elephants living on Sri Lanka, thanks to numerous conservation projects. Asian elephants don't grow as large as their African cousins, and they have smaller ears. In the past, they were hunted for their precious ivory. Today, it's generally only for photo opportunities. This bull elephant is obviously feeling perturbed. Not an entirely safe situation, as bull elephants can weigh up to 5.5 tons and can easily flip over a jeep full of passengers. Luckily, he soon loses interest. Deep tracks in the rice paddies are clear proof that elephants don't just stick to a diet of leaves and grass. A fully grown pachyderm needs about 150 kilograms of sustenance every day. They can destroy a whole crop and with it an entire livelihood with their foraging excursions. For centuries, farmers here have guarded their fields at night to frighten off the elephants with noise or even weapons. Out of reach of the elephants, they've built little huts in the rocks or in treetops. These elevated sentry posts offer good views and are an effective early warning system against possible marauders. But the nights are long. To stay awake, farmers recite long poems called pelkavi, handed down the generations, and today taught in heritage lessons in schools. There are more than 5 million cars, buses and motorcycles riding around on Sri Lanka's roads. In only the past 5 years, the number of vehicles has doubled. These vehicles not only serve as a means of transport for people and goods, but also as a status symbol and sometimes even as a market stall. The market on the edge of the town of Dambulla is both rendezvous and bazaar for the entire region. Everything is available here, from fruit and vegetables to household utensils and betel leaves, said to be stimulating as well as good for your health. There is every possible variety of sweets and especially spices and vegetables on offer. Much of Sri Lanka's widely varied cuisine is vegetarian, as many Far Eastern faiths prohibit the consumption of animals. Some 70 kilometers east of Dambulla lies Polonnaruwa, the ancient royal city. In the 11th and 12th centuries, this was the capital city of the island kingdom. Grand temples, statues and palaces were erected and still bear witness today to the power and importance of Sinhalese royalty. The 10-hectare archaeological park attracts hundreds of visitors every day, not only from overseas, but locals too. It was one of the most significant epochs in the history of Sri Lanka. The ruins today are a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage. The grounds offer many peaceful oases. Jacanas live up to their name of lily trotters as they hunt among the lotus blossoms. There are plenty of insects, amphibians and little fish to make it an ideal refuge for them, despite the tourists. The reclining Buddha statue is one of Sri Lanka's most important artworks. A symbol of Buddhism revered to this day, it attracts many admirers. These ruins are inhabited by tribes of Ceylon bonnet monkeys, a type of macaque, who enjoy nothing more than digging into the offerings left by the devout. A paradisiac life, only rarely threatened by dangerous neighbors, such as this monitor lizard. Macaques live in large family groups and belong to the few primate genera that can swim and even dive. Dark looming clouds signal a change in the weather. Sri Lanka's tropical climate has 2 monsoon seasons that bring heavy rainfalls. But not everywhere, as the mountainous central region creates an effective meteorological divide. This leads to the island having very different climate zones. While it might be raining in the interior, the southwestern coast is basking in bright sunshine, perfect beach weather. The white beaches of Sri Lanka were once a holidaymaker's paradise. Until Christmas 2004. The tsunami of the century hit not only Indonesia and Thailand, but destroyed the south and eastern coasts of Sri Lanka completely. Almost 40,000 people lost their lives, buildings and boats were demolished, and the country's infrastructure was totally disrupted. The effects of this natural disaster will be felt for a long time to come. There is still not enough money to rebuild villages and replace boats. The fishermen aren't starving, though. Their traditional method of trawl fishing yields rich bounty. Helpers all receive a share of the catch, and there are always takers for the rest. Rice paddies as far as the eye can see. It seems as if most of the island is covered in them. But the rice produced here is only enough for domestic needs. Rice is the dietary staple and is eaten at every meal. Countless dams supply the water so essential for rice crops in the paddies. The dams are a great favorite with water buffaloes. Strong yet peaceable, these powerful creatures have for centuries been employed here as working animals. Wallowing in water and mud cools their skin and protects them from irritating insects. To grow a kilogram of rice, you need between 3,000 and 5,000 litres of water. During the monsoon season, rain is plentiful. When the monsoons are over, the 2,000-year-old irrigation system, with its man-made dams and channels, ensures that the rice paddies can be used all year round. High-yield rice crops can be sown and harvested 2 to 3 times a year. Local farmers each farm their individual allotment. The work is exhausting and usually only brings in enough to feed their own family. But most Sri Lankans still live off the land. As in every Buddhist country, there are numerous stupas on Sri Lanka, with elephants as symbolic elements. Originally, stupas were built as tombs for eminent monks, but soon became a symbol of the teachings of Buddha.
Last branch, boys and girls.
One should always walk clockwise around a stupa. This is said to improve one's own karma.
Okay, we've finished our karma now.
A belief in reincarnation is useful if you happen to be driving a car in Sri Lanka. Hair-raising overtaking maneuvers on the narrow roads seem almost obligatory. Hooting is pretty well mandatory too, and no one takes offense. It's a long bus ride along a winding mountain road to the central highlands of Sri Lanka. The landscape, with its montane rainforests, rises up to 2,500 meters above sea level. With the Declaration of Independence from the British Commonwealth in 1972, Ceylon was renamed Sri Lanka. However, Ceylon tea is still recognized today as a symbol of quality. Together with India, Kenya and China, Sri Lanka is one of the largest producers of tea in the world. And the area around the city of Nuwara Eliya is a major tea-producing region. Nuwara Eliya lies about 2,000 meters above sea level. With an average temperature of 16 degrees centigrade, the climate here is ideal for growing tea. Tea harvesting is women's work. A stick indicates which leaves and buds may be picked. Whatever grows above the level may be harvested. A woman can harvest around 18 kilograms of tea every day, for which she's paid around $2. The tea leaves are then taken to a nearby collection point, where every sack is carefully weighed and the weight noted. After this, the green tea leaves are put through a complicated process of fermentation and drying. The uplands around here rarely get hot or sunny. The climate is temperate, and abundant rainfalls are the source of its many creeks, rivers, and waterfalls. The roaring of the cascading falls creates a constant backdrop of sound, as an artist works on capturing the scenery's natural beauty. In the 19th century, British colonial officers used to come to Nuwara Eliya to rest and recuperate. Many of their buildings and gardens are still preserved today. It was the era of the powerful tea barons. Ceylon tea became world famous. One of the most popular tourist destinations in the country is the Elephant Orphanage. Despite elephants having a very special status in Sri Lankan culture, an estimated 200 of them are killed by people every year. A baby elephant losing its mother in this way has very little chance of survival in the wild on its own. The Elephant Orphanage provides a refuge for these babies. Older elephant cows often adopt these calves as their own, even though they did not give birth to them. Visitors are able to get up close to the animals here and observe their behavior. In very hot weather, elephants will fan their ears. As the ears are well supplied with blood vessels, they function as a cooling system for the whole body. The elephant orphanage herd consumes several tons of food every day. Their keepers have to work hard just to keep up. In the afternoon, well fortified and in an orderly fashion, they head off to somewhere very special. Every day, the elephants bathe in a nearby river. The water cools them off, its wetness helping to soothe their skin. For visitors, this lively spectacle is definitely a high point of the day, as it obviously is for the elephants too. At around 5 years old, the young elephants are able to look after themselves. They're then released into the wild in a protected national park to live in freedom in one of the greatest places of the world, Sri Lanka. The French Vosges, a natural mountain landscape in the heart of Europe. Its rocks and forests offer a rich habitat for abundant wildlife. And its emblem is the stork. Sunrise on the day of the equinox, March the 21st, the prelude to spring. On the Grand Ballon, the highest peak in the Vosges, there is still snow on the ground. But it started to melt everywhere. The snow melt cascades in rivulets down to the valley. On sun-warmed branches, blackbirds and titmice search for nutritious insects. In the lower-lying deciduous forests, the snow has already disappeared. Lone patches of ice in streams still hint at the cold winter past. A hedge sparrow heralds the coming warmer weather. It's April. The still bare forest is flooded by spring sunshine. Its rays act like a signal to the trees. Delicate buds burst open and the first beech leaves unfold. They absorb the sun's energy, channeling it to the tree and stimulating growth. Fresh greenery begins to sprout everywhere, and within a few short weeks, the forest is in full sap. With the cold season barely over, the storks begin to return from their winter quarters in Spain and Africa. 30 years ago, they had almost entirely disappeared. Today, there are 400 resident breeding pairs in the Vosges region. In spring, storks will usually return to the nests they left the previous year, as here near Münster in France. They busily go about rebuilding their nests, though they may not always agree on the exact design. A stork nest is around 1 meter in diameter and can weigh well over 500 kilograms, and you need masses of fresh twigs to build it. Nest building is exhausting work, so good nutrition is vital. To provide enough food, storks need a damp meadow landscape habitat with shallow ponds and lush grassland where they can search for small creatures. The Münster Valley has plenty of stork meadows, a good reason for the feathered emblem of the Alsace and the Vosges to return here. Above the valleys, gnarled old beech trees fringe the alpine meadows. Their twisted trunks bear witness to the harsh mountain climate and the relentless wind. Solitary sentinels, they brave nature's rougher side, permitting the occasional glimpse of the far-distant Rhine Valley. Wood anemones bloom in the sunny meadows. And in the shelter of bushes and herbs, snails and beetles also survive the winter at over 1,000 meters above sea level. Down in the valley, it's high season for stork breeding. By late May, almost all the stork pairs in the Münster Valley have had offspring. Even the very small chicks are insatiable. Their parents have to gather 1 kilo of food per young stork every day. They barely have time for a brief clattered greeting before one of them is off again on the hunt for food. The Vosges region is not only renowned for its storks, its extensive forests are famous too. In the northern Vosges, deciduous forests that are rich in species often reach up to the higher slopes. Here and there, deeply fissured sandstone outcrops tower above the treetops. Water, wind, and frost wear away at the stone, creating curious shapes, like this honeycomb weathering pattern. The red coloring comes from the iron content of the sandstone. Lizards enjoy basking in the sunshine on rocky ledges. And it's an excellent vantage point for the kestrel to prepare his next hunting foray. The forest's closed canopy offers many animals protection and sustenance. In its shade, a hedgehog hunts for insects and snails. Late May, and hinds give birth to their offspring. The fawn's hides are initially white-spotted. This gives them excellent camouflage in the dappled light of the forest floor. In the North Vosges Nature Reserve, many areas are under protection. The forest dung beetle can forage away here in peace and quiet. Fungi, dung, and rotting vegetation are its favorite delicacies. The hedgehog, on the other hand, is a predator. It's mainly carnivorous. It diligently rummages around on the forest floor, often taking dung beetles by surprise. The kestrel is also on the hunt. Hovering in one place in the air, it searches for its prey. Chamois aren't on his list, they're too big. The rugged mountainsides in the south are an ideal habitat for mountain goats. It was only in 1956 that they were released into the wild in the upper Vosges. Today, there are several hundred of them. In the mountains, the weather can change very quickly. Looming clouds herald a storm. The storks return to their nests. Their eyries are at the mercy of wind and weather. The adult birds must protect their young from the rain and cold, or their delicate down would quickly become saturated. Not even the adult stork's plumage is entirely waterproof. If the rain persists, their feathers become soggy and heavy. This makes it almost impossible for them to fly off in search of food. Some use the opportunity to beautify their nests, or perhaps to sire some offspring. When the summer is hot and dry, stormy showers are a blessing for the forest. At last, the plants get a proper soaking. But do the caterpillars taste any juicier? In the dripping wet forest, a lynx seeks a dry spot. To the melodic territorial call of a blackbird. Tirelessly, the spotted woodpecker hammers away at a branch. Envious rivals are given short shrift. Lynx were released back into the wild here as recently as 1983, a controversial act in this area. Not everyone was happy to see this predator's return. Young chamois deer forage unsuspectingly. But this time, danger lurks close by. The lynx is rarely seen during the daytime. It patrols its territory, spanning several hundred square kilometers, mainly after dark. A closer look at the southern Vosges mountains reveals a wide variety of wildflowers, herbs and grasses. The willow herb grows on rocky hillsides and is a great favorite of the chamois. The mountain pansy, on the other hand, only flourishes in damp mountain meadows. After the rains, beetles venture forth from their shelters. For snails, the damp leaves and fruit are a gastropod paradise. The last raindrops soon disappear. The damp evaporates, rising in thick clouds from the forests. For the storks, the first thing is to get their wings dry. The young imitate their elders energetically. They're growing fast and need plenty of food. This means the adults are constantly on the go, trying to keep up with the demand. They catch mice, frogs, snakes, worms and insects on the meadow, around 800 grams for themselves, plus 1 kilo for each chick every day. They pay no attention to the grey heron nearby. Streams are the lifeline of the valleys. Until the 16th century, these unspoiled meadows in the valley of the river Zawa were home to the legendary aurochs. The water attracts creatures of all sizes, big and small. It's the mating season. The mating dance of these dragonflies looks like a rather complicated business. Other insects have evidently found much simpler methods. Annoying rivals don't make the business of reproduction any easier either. Countless species of insects ensure that their future generations will continue to populate the fields. Many of the lakes in the Vosges are surrounded by moors. Paddling away on the water's surface is a mallard duck. It's Europe's most common dabbling duck and can survive almost anywhere. It builds its nest among the reeds along the shore. Cotton grass is a typical peat bog plant. Its grassy blades provide good protection for frogs. Almost motionless, this frog waits for its prey. Its diet consists of insects, including the ordinary dragonfly. The inconspicuous sundew is one of the few carnivorous plants. Exuding sticky droplets, the sundew traps insects, digests them, and extracts their nutrients. This is how the plant manages to survive in the sparse moor soil. Nutrient poor, the moors are home to a wide variety of highly specialized animals and plants. But it's a finely balanced habitat. The moors in the Vosges are strictly protected. It takes a few months before a young stag can use its antlers as weapons. In June, their antlers are still growing and are covered by a nutrient-rich velvet sheath. Deer spend around 8 hours a day browsing. They eat almost any vegetation they can find in the forest. The immature antlers are still mostly a nuisance, though they are perfect for scratching those hard-to-reach spots. Between meals, the deer rest and ruminate. This helps them digest even the most fibrous food. More than 1,000 deer roam the extensive forests in the northern Vosges. In the hollow of an old tree, hornets have built their hive. The entrance to the hornet's stronghold is under strict guard. Anyone flying in or out is checked out thoroughly. The hornet offspring in the nest are fed with captured insects. The swarm lasts for just one summer. Only the queen spends the winter here so she can start a new hive next year. Back in the Munster Valley, towards the end of July, the young storks are almost fully fledged. Only their dark beaks distinguish them from their elders now. At 1 meter tall and weighing 3 to 4 kilograms, the fledglings are as big and heavy as a fully grown stork. Those who can already fly now follow their elders out into the meadows. The young storks have to learn to forage on their own. Often they will follow an older stork in the group, gathering practical experience along the way. They don't have much time, as the storks are getting ready to head south quite soon. The wren is the smallest of the local bird population. It lives off the abundant insect life in the forest. Spiders are among its favorite foods. The beech nuts are starting to ripen. In the forest, summer is at its zenith. The beech is the most important tree in the Vosges. Under favorable conditions, they can reach heights of up to 40 meters. Beeches don't bear fruit every year. Their so-called fruiting years come along only every few years when their beech nuts grow in profusion. The hilltops of the southern Vosges are mostly bare. They're known as ballons, and only the occasional wind-hardened beach is to be found here. A wide variety of grasses and herbs covers the high mountain range along the Route de Crête and the Ballons. Their flowers are popular pit stops for small creatures. Flies, beetles, butterflies and grasshoppers enjoy the refreshment of the sweet nectar and pollen. Thistles might be unpleasant for humans, but for insects and birds they are a veritable banqueting table. Summer is time for sweet, ripe fruit, including blueberries. Mice and grasshoppers enjoy them just as much as the chamois do. They gorge till they're big and fat in preparation for winter in the mountains. In August, all the young stalks are now full grown. Young and old are all well nourished and now gather in the meadow to prepare for the big departure. At the end of summer, some 2/3 of the Munster Valley stalks take off and head south. Covering around 200 kilometers a day, it takes them around 2 weeks to reach their winter quarters in Spain or North Africa. In the highlands of the Vosges, summer ends early. It's September. Grass and herbs begin to wither. The sun sets earlier every day. Clear, cold nights herald the arrival of autumn. Night frosts often persist until well into the morning. The weather conditions create moods that reveal the mountains in all their glory, while the valleys below are shrouded in mist. The chamois retreat into the lower, more protected mountain regions. On some days, the autumn air is crystal clear. From the Grand Ballon, even the faraway Alps can be seen. In the northern Vosges, primeval noises echo throughout the autumnal forests. In full rut, belling or roaring loudly, stags challenge their opponents. Only the strongest stag will become the lead bull and enjoy mating precedence. Autumn transforms the deciduous Vosges forests into a sea of brilliant colour. Even though the colourful display is scientifically explained as being due to the trees losing their chlorophyll, these rich golden yellow hues still seem like magic to the eye. The trees will soon be bare. The forests of the Vosges will have to wait until the storks return before they can burst into life again.